everybody, thanks for joining me here today. This is Nicole with Topaz, and today's session is on the introduction to the new Topaz Texture Effects. So I am super excited about this program. This program allows users to create more complex effects in much less time than you take in other editing software. And that's really one of the main advantages of texture effects. It also includes over 130 effects and over 275 high-resolution 5,000 by 5,000 pixel textures, light leaks, and other assets. So it lets you create the look that you really want. It gives you the resources to do so, and it does it in a very, very fast way, and it's pretty intuitive as well. It's all combined within this one program. So today we're going to talk about everything that I can get to. We're going to cover all the adjustments available within the program, in addition some of the usability factors and the new Topaz community as well that's being introduced with this new program. Texture Effects is compatible as a plugin through Photoshop and Lightroom, as well as other compatible software. You can check that out, but it is also a standalone program, and that's how I'm going to be using it here today. When you open up Topaz Texture Effects, this is the screen that you're greeted with, and I'm just going to go ahead and drag and drop an image from my other monitor directly into where it says drag and drop. That'll pop up, and here I have all of my effects over here on the right-hand side in the effects panel, and in the main window I have my preview. We just have a few tools here within the preview window. We have the ability to go back and forth with your original, but you can also use your space bar or your left mouse button when you click on the image itself. We also have our zoom control here, where you can fit the image in, zoom in and out, or go to 100% to view the image at 100% within the program. So let's go back to fit. There we go. Let me tell you a little bit more about the program. Within all of the effects, you have all sorts of ways to find the look that you're after. We have really soft and subtle lighting effects found within the ethereal collection, and different soft grunge effects. And then we have some really high impact grunge and contrast as well, which you can find within the gritty grunge and the pop or lo-fi effects as well. So there's all sorts of effects for you to browse through. Again, we have 130, and they're all going to be broken down into several collections that you can access through this drop down, and you can go to Earthy. Earthy's going to be great for landscape images and nature, portraits, that type of thing. It has a lot of earth tones to it, as well as just being good for that type of subject. Then we have ethereal, which we just kind of looked at. It's going to have all sorts of lovely lighting effects, more soft effects, and just really beautiful effects for things like weddings or forest shots when you want to kind of get that magical fairy tale type of an effect. Oops, I went into their browse. Let me get out of there real quickly, and I'll show you that here in just a second. Maybe. 1 second. Okay, we're back. And now we can keep on going. Again, as I said, high impact and super grungy is going to be found within our gritty grunge, and this is one of my favorite collections because this is where you really start to see all of the different effects applied and adjustments applied to your image, and you can really start to see those textures pull through in this category. We then come down to lo-fi. Lo-fi is going to have some low fidelity type of effects where you see a lot of light leaks coming in from the side like you do here. I love this 80s haze filter. But you have some more just lo-fi effects, or effects that you might get from older types of cameras or imagery or prints. And then you have pop grunge, and this is just kind of our own category where you can, it's going to have all sorts of more poppy type of an effects. So things like glowing bright or flat neon. You start to get a little bit more pop and color saturation, and still some heavy grunge in some sorts or heavy effects, but all kind of catered towards that pop effect. Then we have soft grunge. This is one of my other favorite collections because you still see some of those texture assets coming through in a lot of these effects. However, it's a more soft and subtle and just not as tough and grungy as far as the overall effect being applied to your image. So some really beautiful effects within this category. Lastly, we have vintage, and vintage is great. You're going to see a lot of monotone images or duotone images that are just pulling in a little bit extra tone. A lot of textures using a lot of the dust and scratches to try to simulate effects that are similar to vintage effects. So whether it's a color photograph or a color print or perhaps an old sepia-toned print, you'll have lots of different effects in here that simulate that vintage effect. If you want to search in a different method than these collections, we have that available for you. Over here you'll see 3 little dots that are in a column. Just click on that and move to tags. Tags will separate the effects into types of photography that we have selected that those images or that type of an effect might be good for. So maybe if I go in and I say wedding for this little bridesmaid here, I can click on wedding and it's going to show me effects that we think, or the user who created the effect thinks is going to be good for wedding photography. So you can search by tags and types of photography instead if that is your preference. By default it goes to the collection, but I find myself going here quite a bit because I feel like it breaks it down for my subject a little bit better. You can also search. So if I wanted to perhaps look for something that actually has wedding in the name of the preset, I can type in wedding. And actually it's going to pull up wedding tags as well. I just realized that. But it'll also pull up even if the effect isn't tagged with wedding, it's going to pull up anything that has wedding attached to the name too. So you have that ability to search a little bit easier. Let's go directly into browsing more presets and in a different way. And that is going to go into our community. The new Topaz community can be accessed through that browse button at the upper left of the effects column. And it's going to pull up not only your local effects that you have on your system, but also your community effects that you have on your system, or the community effects that are on our cloud-based community that other people, other users just like you have shared to the community for you to download and apply to your image. So when you open up the browser, you're going to see a bunch of effects that pull up, and over here on the left-hand side, you're going to see a preview of that effect. You can still use your space bar or your mouse to see before and after, which I really love within this particular preview option. And then you're going to see the name of the preset, the categories that the user or the author of that particular effect is using or chose, as well as their tags. It will actually give you the author name, and this is going to be the username, the Topaz username, how many times it's been downloaded, and when it was uploaded to the community. You can easily just go through and use your arrow keys to navigate in here, and once you get to the bottom of that particular set, it's going to reload more images for you to scroll through. And eventually this is just going to be huge. This is an ever-growing list that continues to grow as people purchase this new program, and we're loving seeing all of these effects come through. But with that, this ever-growing list of effects, we really wanted to provide you with several ways of searching. First, you should probably know about the way that you can not categorize, but list them. You can do it alphabetically from A to Z or Z to A, but I like to do it either by downloads to see which ones have been downloaded the most and which ones are being used the most, and that's how we have it by default. But if you also want to see new effects, if you've already you've constantly opened in this download, sometimes you want to see what are the newest effects that people are uploading to the community. I want to see what's happened in the last day. So you can change the way that is listed within that main browser. The other searching, and now we see, let's see here, Bowden Grunge made by Tosif, which has been downloaded 135 times because it's really quite a beautiful preset. Here's before and after. This was only uploaded yesterday. It's been downloaded quite a bit. You can see all that information pull up in a different way. Now let's come over to the right side where we have all the different ways of really narrowing your search and targeting exactly the look that you're after. So by default, you're looking at both the local and the community effects. If you want to just view the community and not your local side, you can go to just the community. And as I showed you, each user-created effect, there are categories and tags associated with those effects. So to the right of the library selection of which effects you're going to browse, you have the ability to come in and say, I want to look at this category. So let's go to soft grunge. So it's going to pull up my community effects that have a soft grunge category attached to it. And then I can go over to the right-hand side and even narrow it further by the type of photography. So maybe I'll go with wedding. We'll see if that pulls up a lot. Oh, it pulls up 3. Okay. And then I can even narrow it further by typing in a keyword. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to look at the effects that I have available here. Maybe I really like church. I actually do really like it. I would brighten it up a little bit with a basic adjustment back in my adjustment mode, and that's what we'll go through the process of doing. So if you like an effect, you don't even have to be logged into the Topaz community to actually download shared presets. I love that because sometimes you don't want to be logged into any community. You just want to browse and download, and that's completely available to you. So to download an effect that is in our community and put it onto your local system, it's quite easy. You just have this download icon in the middle of the effects that aren't already on your system. Click on that. It's going to switch to a slider icon once it's downloaded and in your local system. Please know that if you're downloading somebody's preset and it takes a little bit longer, it's not immediate, it means that you're also downloading their texture assets because they've used their personal texture assets instead of Topaz texture assets. When you create an effect or you download an effect that only uses texture from the Topaz libraries, then it's going to be an immediate switch like it was here. Once you see the slider icon, like I said, I want to go in and brighten this up for this particular image, but this is almost there. But I do want to do a little bit of work. You can quickly go into the effect by clicking again on the slider within the middle of the effect, and it's going to pull up my adjustment view. And this is where I want to go next anyways, is into my adjustment view. And when you get into your adjustment view, you'll see which adjustments have been used on this particular effect. You can go in and turn certain adjustments on and off with the eyeball, which I really love to do. It's kind of just showing before and after. And actually, this particular texture here, let's see what they've chosen. Yeah, it's a darker brown texture that I'm really not loving, and I actually like it beforehand. So this is a great opportunity to give you an example of now deleting this because I don't need it. I'm just going to delete this particular adjustment by clicking on the trash can and continue looking at my before and afters. I'm really liking the rest of that. The color overlay, I'm just going to open up, maybe take the opacity a bit down. I like the vignette. Basic adjustment has a lot of work there. Now I'm going to add a new basic adjustment, which is going to allow me to add my brightness. I'm going to go over each one of these adjustments here in just a second, but I just wanted to show you the normal workflow that I go through when working with those community effects. I would just come in and change my brightness, perhaps change my clarity just a touch and go a little bit more smooth, and maybe I'll take my highlights up just a little bit, really blow out some of those highlights a little bit and make them glow. And then take my overall shadows a little bit down, get myself closer to black. And I'm pretty happy right here. So fairly quickly I've come up with my new effect for this particular image. Here's before and after. And before I get into the individual adjustments and the sliders and the tools, let's go ahead and go through the process of saving this now my effect. It is no longer the church effect because I've added a basic adjustment, I've changed a few things, and I want to save this particular one. So I'm going to go up to the top right and click on the Save icon. When that comes up, that dialog pops up, you can name your preset. So I'll just name this Flower Girl Test. And I can choose which category I like this type of an effect for. And I probably like the soft grunge and maybe no, I don't want to do the ethereal. I'll just do soft grunge and then come down here and choose wedding. Maybe it might also be good for some commercial or fashion, things like that. Just choose the tags that you feel would be good. You don't have to think about it too hard. And press save. And now the name of my effect here has changed to Flower Girl Test. I can go back into my effects preview and it's going to go directly into my effects and you'll see that new effect within the my effects category. Now we get to sharing. Let's say I want to share this effect and I love this effect and I want to share it with the community. It's very easy to do so. You just click on this share icon directly on the effect. Looks like a little bracket. And I shared it. If you're logged in when you share, I thought I wasn't logged in. I'll need to log out and show you that process. If you're logged in, it'll automatically share to the community and a little pop-up will say thanks for sharing. And now I can go in and check out my shared effect. But I want to show you the login process as well. Let me just click that X. I'll go ahead and log out over here. And I'm actually going to take this effect off of the community, which you can easily delete your shared effects by clicking on the X. And it's going to take it out of the community. You'll see the shared icon pop right back up. So you can share it again if you'd like, which is what we're going to do. I'm going to click on that icon again, and instead of sharing it, when you're logged out of the community, a Welcome to the Topaz Community pop-up will come up, and you just enter your username or Topaz email address. If you've ever purchased anything with Topaz, just use that account information that's already in our system. So for me, my username is Nichole. I know, very original. And then we have my password. I'll just enter that. Once I have that information, I'm going to press login. But if you don't know that information, or let's say you've never purchased through Topaz or tried out anything before, you might need to register. So you can click on register if you don't have any of this information. But if you simply forgot your password, just click on forgot your password and you will be walked through getting your password or resetting it. So I'm going to press login now. And now I'm logged into the community. I know that I'm logged in because I see this Welcome to the Topaz Community pop-up. This is what you'll see the first time you log in. If you don't want to see it anymore, you can say don't show this message, but I'm going to continue. And now over on the top left, instead of saying log in, it now says log out. So that's another indication that I'm logged in currently. And now that I am logged in, I can click on that shared icon again. It's going to say thanks for sharing. I can say search the Topaz Community Effects now, and now go back into the community, and you can easily see your shared effects two ways. Right after you share, you can change it to the new way of displaying, and it's going to show you the newest shared effects, and we should see ours first, so that's good. Oops, there we go. Flower Girl Test. So you see that's right there. Awesome. And then we see all the information that we put for that particular effect. But if I also just want to see all of my shared effects, I can go to the All Effects directly to the right of the library selection and click on My Shared Effects. It's going to bring up my shared effects. And there we go. All right, with that, let's move on. I'm going to go click on Nicole's awesome effect. All right, that's just got us back into our adjustment area. I'm going to press Reset All. Sometimes you're just not after a certain effect, and you want to create your own effect the way you want. It's so simple within this program. This is really where Texture Effects shines, and this is the idea behind it, to give you the power to create these effects without all of the learning curves and time it takes in other editing software. So here I'm just going to say Reset All, and it's going to get rid of all of my adjustments. Upper right, reset. I'm going to say OK. Please know that within the Effects panel, I'm going to click out of this. Sorry. within the regular effects panel, you can also start fresh immediately by clicking on this new icon. So I'm just going to click on that, and now I have a blank adjustment stack. To start adding adjustments, you just click on Add Adjustment, and start from the top is what I usually suggest. I always do a basic adjustment first just to get some nice toning qualities done and get it ready for an effect, I suppose. I find that I've not been going into other editing software because prior to using texture effects, because this basic adjustment really gives me all of the standard tools that I need. And so here I can just go in and maybe change my temperature and saturation, mess with my color and the overall tone of my image. To kind of go over all of the individual sliders that I just touched, that brightness slider is going to affect mostly just your midtones. One of the greatest things about this basic adjustment are this brightness, shadow, and highlight control, because you can take your brightness up and still have a beautiful shadow because my shadow is going down. We've really separated the midtones, the shadows, and the highlights to give you ultimate contrast control, and the way that it works is pretty impressive in my opinion. So then we come down to our clarity slider, and this is going to affect the local contrast and tonal balance. So if you go to the right, you're going to start to see a lot of the local contrast start to pop out, and you'll see some highlights and shadows get a little bit brighter and darker. Sliding to the left, you're going to start to see that smooth out, and you start to get a very flat effect by removing clarity. So you can really take this either direction to get the effect that you're after. Saturation, temperature, and tint are fairly explainable themselves. They're standard adjustments. And then we get down to the opacity slider. There is an opacity slider within each one of our adjustments. We really wanted to give you full control over going into on the adjustment level, not just the overall, which we do have an overall opacity located within our masking module at the very bottom of the adjustment stack, and you can always change the overall opacity of the entire effect stack. But here, you can do the individual opacity as well. I am going to leave this at 100% for now and just say add another adjustment. I'm going to go over our masking on the adjustment level here later. Next, we go into our diffusion. I'm just going to go down the list. So first we have more photography effects, and then we get into the overlay effects like textures and light leaks and things like that. So let's go quickly over these photography effects. The diffusion is going to simulate characteristics like those you might see within traditional diffusion filters. So you're going to see some softening and spreading out of light as you take this strength slider up. This is fantastic to create a dreamlike effect and create some haziness to it. So it's actually really beautiful in this particular image. You can come in and add some additional softness to the overall detail within your image to kind of help with that diffused look. We have actually added in blur as well, which really softens and takes everything, all that detail out. You don't have to use it, but I tend to use it just a tiny bit to start to get that really beautiful haziness and dreamlike atmosphere. So here's before. Here's after. You'll find diffusion in a lot of the ethereal effects. Know that if you see some blur within an effect, you probably have a diffusion filter applied or an edge blur, and you can easily come in and just delete that and get a sharp effect as well if you like the toning and the overall adjustments. So know that that's where that blur is coming from. Speaking of, let's get down to edge blur, and now that I'm going into edge blur, I'm going to delete my diffusion because I really want you to see the edge blur effects. The edge blur is exactly what it sounds. It's going to blur your edges. It's kind of like a vignette except for blur. So you can come in, and by default your blur is in the middle of your image. You can change the blur strength, how you like it transition, if you wanted a softer transition or much harder, which you can really see if I take that blur all the way up, that's just a hard line when the transition's all the way down at 0. But if you take that transition up, you're going to see a lot of natural transition come in between the effect and the unaffected part. You also have the opacity slider here, but if you want to change the positioning of the blur focal point or the shape itself, just click on blur shape, and you're going to see a on-screen manipulation tool come up, and you can easily just change the shape by dragging the points around exactly the way you want. So maybe I want everything but my little girl blurred out, or I can even move it around very quickly, I can additionally go to one of the points and just hover with my mouse, click my mouse key, and rotate as well. Once you're done reshaping that blur area or the focus area, you can unclick your blur shape, and there you have it. Here's before and after. I'm a huge fan of that edge blur. All right, another adjustment. Here we go down to edge exposure. Edge exposure is very cool within this program. We have it within black and white effects, but not as robust. Really, the original edge blur that we put in black and white effects was to allow you to increase or decrease the darkness of the edge of your image, which is a traditional darkroom type of effect that you can do to kind of close up any edges of your image that might be a little too bright, so you can really close the that difference between the tone and then the paper. But within this program, we've taken it a step further and we've added color strength and color, which really allows for you to add these really cool light leak effects and all sorts of different effects. So let's say I want to add a light leak effect to the top. We already have some really bright areas at the top, so let's just increase that. I'm going to, oh, that's the left-hand side. First, you'll need to select which edge you want to affect, and you can do that through the icons, the 4 icons here. I want to affect the top, so if your arrow is pointing to the top edge, just click that, and you know that it's affecting the top edge. And now I can go darker or brighter. So if I decide to go a little bit brighter, I can do that to the left. I can change the size, have it really come down into my image, or just have it just a touch. I can change that transition, a normal transition type of change. It changes the transition between the effect and the non-affected area. And then color strength. Color strength, you can take that different colors and look at the areas here. Here's blue, pink. You can really switch that around. Now it's not showing up a lot because of the bright area, so I'm going to go to my right-hand side and show you a little bit more of what you can do here. So you can have that color coming in. Now you don't have to use the color, but it's there if you want it. And I love, you'll see this color strength and color slider repeated in several of our adjustments. So this is pretty the same way used in each one as well. So that carries over into the next adjustments as well. So a lot of fun there. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Let's go to film grain. Film grain is going to simulate traditional film grain. I'll go to 100% so you can see it. So let me take the size of the film grain up, the strength, which is going to increase the contrast of the film grain, and then this is super strong. But then you can also use this randomizer to make sure that you're not applying the exact same film grain each time you're at this particular size and strength. So this randomizer is really nice to make sure that you have a different grain on each image. I'll go ahead and delete that and go back to fit. And now we go down to our posterize. Posterize is a really unique effect, and it helps to create posters. And the way that it does that is it separates your image tone into fewer and fewer tones based upon your input image, and it's going to start abruptly changing tone as you decrease the amount of tones that you want in your image. So you'll start to see much stronger changes there. But as you go to the right, you'll see a lot of tones allowed through the depth, and then you can also increase or decrease your details for the effect that you want. This is something you'll see a lot in the pop grunge category to kind of just give you a little bit of, I don't know, just artistic posterized effect. We thought it looked really cool and wanted to introduce it in this program. Or not introduce it, but include it. Then we come to split tone. Split tone is highly used throughout throughout a lot of the effects as well. It allows for you to tone tone your image with two hues, one based on the shadow tones and one based on the highlight tones. So I can take the highlight saturation up and then choose my color that I'd like my highlights to be. Maybe I want them to go yellow. Same idea with the shadow saturation, and then I can choose the shadow hue that I want. And then I can come to my balance slider, and the balance is going to control where the hues on the tonal scale are blended. So if I want them to be a little bit more towards, I want to have more highlights than shadow tone coming through, I can go towards the left. And if I want to have more shadow tone coming through and less of the highlight tone, I can do that, or I can take the balance to the right. Opacity is something I use consistently within the split tone, so I don't have to come in and individually move my saturation sliders all around. I can just come in, opacity, take that down, and get a really beautiful toning effect without having to do much work. Here's before, and here's after. Let's go a little bit stronger. Here's before and after. All right, let's get rid of that guy. Now let's go down to our last, more traditional photography effect, and that's going to be our vignette. The vignette is traditional vignette. As you take it up, you're going to be able to increase the strength of that vignette. You can choose the color you'd like it to be. By default, it is black, but you can come in and let's say I want to put more of a, well, let's just do white. I'll do white, or maybe a little bit of pink or something like that. Peach. That looks good. So I'll say OK. And now you'll see that is a peach vignette. I can take the size down or up. I can take that transition down to where I get a strong line, or I can take it way up to where I get a much more natural transition. I can take my roundness down. Let's take that transition down so you see it. The roundness is going to give me more rectangular effect, and the going to the right of my roundness tool is going to give me more of an oval effect. I'll take that transition back up. And now I can change my center as well. I'm just going to click on my center, and I can come into my image now and move my center point around wherever I need it to be. And it's as easy as that to choose the center. So here's before and after. Go ahead and get rid of that one, and let's go on to our overlay area. And we're going to start with our borders. We'll just keep going down in the order that we have them ordered here. So borders are the first adjustment area where you're going to start to see the asset libraries come into play. The asset libraries, again, there's 275 different assets available for you to scroll through that we've included in the program. Please note that this is why the program download is very large. It's 1.5 gigs, and we've had some comments on that. But just please know that you're not only downloading the program, you're downloading this huge library of assets and textures and things that come with it. And they're high resolution, so you get the best quality effect. And we didn't skimp on those, so we thought it was worth the download size so that you have that. All right, so within each of the overlay modules or overlay adjustments, you're going to see a drop-down where you can go in and look at the different categories. So maybe I want to add a grunge border effect to this image. I'll open up the grunge, and you can just scroll over these effects or these assets to see them immediately applied to your image. Here is where you start to see how beneficial and how fast this program is compared to using more traditional photo editing software. You can see all of these different assets applied to your image so quickly without having to import each and every one. So that's great. I'm going to go ahead and choose this particular border and then show you some of the tools within the program or within these particular adjustment modules that carry over. They're going to be common tools, and those are going to be your flip options. So you can flip horizontally, you can flip vertically, you can also invert, and that's going to give you some really interesting effects when it comes to certain effects like your borders. But when it comes to textures, it can give you a completely different texturized effect that you might really enjoy. You then have your size slider, which is going to increase the size of the asset applied. You can also click on Keep Aspect Ratio. By default, our assets are going to fill and kind of distort to fit the input image that you brought in. So if you brought in a 4:6 image, our assets are 5:5. So it's going to distort and fill the way you want it to. Sometimes when you're working with textures especially, you don't want your texture stretched. It's just not the effect that you are after. So you can click on Keep Aspect Ratio. I'll do that within the texture module. I want to not keep my aspect ratio so I get a full border effect here with this one. Then we have our blending mode. Blending mode for borders is going to start off in multiply because that's really where it works best if you're trying to add these darker borders to your image. If you want to add a lighter border to your image, you can go over all of these different blend modes so quickly to check it out and see what different effects or different blends, how it will affect your image. This is one of the other key areas where the speed is just increased exponentially in some other editing programs because you can immediately see this applied to your image. I'm going to go back to multiply. Then we come down to detail. Detail is going to increase the detail of the asset itself, not the image. So you can increase the detail of your textures or your borders like this and really get some of that grit and grime to stand out. Or if you just like the toning that's in there and you don't necessarily want such grungy border like this, you can go to the left and really start to smooth out the detail. So you can smooth or increase detail very easily. Saturation will increase the saturation of the applied asset, not the overall image. Sometimes you'll see the overall image a little bit changed with that saturation slider or color strength and color. That's because there's a little bit of tone within the asset itself. Color strength, like we went over this with edge exposure, same idea. You can add any color that you choose and blend it in with the effect with that particular asset that you have applied and really get your own color. When you choose your color and saturation, you can get some really cool effects. Let's move on to our next overlay area, and that's going to be color overlay. This is a little bit different than the rest of our overlay adjustments. Here, you can overlay a single color on your image, and when you combine that with blending modes, even though it's just a solid color, it can create so many different toning effects when changed with blending modes. It's so cool. So let's say I want to change my color to, maybe we'll go kind of go purpley. Sure, why not? We'll say okay. By default, it's in normal blending mode. So if I went up to 100% opacity, I'm just going to see a full-on normal color overlay. By default, our opacity is about 0.3. I'll go ahead and point it at 0.5-ish. With the blending mode, as you scroll over, look how quickly you can see and transform your image tone using this more traditional way of toning through some programs. It's just so cool. I really like the color one or the soft light for this. Yeah, I'm going to go with soft light and take my opacity down. And very quickly with one overlay, I was able to get this. Here's before, here's after. Just a beautiful toning effect in a very simple way. Next up is our double exposure. Double exposure isn't going to be great for this particular image, but I might be able to show you real quick how it works. Double exposure is fantastic for creating the double exposure effect that is pretty popular out there right now. So if you've seen those pictures of people and they kind of dissolve into a forest in their hair or something like that. This is the type of adjustment module where you can create that effect. And the way that you do that is quite easy. You can just select the asset that you want to apply. So let's say for this one I want to put, I'm not sure what's going to be best. well, just to give you an example, we'll go ahead and put some of this particular town that I took. We have some stock imagery. This is really where you're going to use your own assets quite a bit. I provided stock imagery for you so you could go ahead and just see how it might work, but really it's all about your own assets here. So here you can change the size very easily. You can move the individual asset around. You can do this in any of the assets. So let's say I want to add this town into only her dress. Very quickly, let's get out of that normal blending mode and see which one works best for this particular image. I'm thinking, I'm going to go all the way up and see. That Hardlight is doing some nice things. I'm just looking at her dress right now just to see how it's applying into the dress. And I'm going to paint it back in using our masking modules, and this is a good opportunity to show you our different masking modules. Okay, so I think what I'll do is go use the Hardlight. And it just depends on the certain image, which blending mode is going to be best. So this is why this type of blend mode, instant preview, is just going to be really helpful. Okay, so now that I have this, I don't want to put it on the rest of the image. I only want to put it in our dress. So let's start masking. Within each adjustment, you're going to see adjustment level masking. By default, it'll be turned on to none, but you can come in and turn the spot mask on. Spot mask is what it sounds like. It's going to give you one spot to mask out. By default, it's going to mask out the area, but if you want to mask it in, just press invert, and you can move your center point around. This also has the on-screen manipulation tool, so if I want to quickly just paint it into a certain area, I can do that. But it's not super exact because it is a spot. This is going to be great for things that you want to add to the edges of your image, or maybe you want to use a texture asset to actually create a texturized border to the edges. You can easily use these spot tools, and you can get really natural transitions by working with your transition slider or very exact transitions. Color aware strength is going to make sure that only the spot that you have selected with your center point is the color that's being affected within that particular area. So for example, let's say this is actually a really good example. Okay, so let's increase the size of this point, and I'm going to take my color aware strength off. Okay, so now I've increased the size of this point. If I want to only affect the white within her dress, I can try to do that. Just making sure the center point is on her dress. I'm going to take that color aware strength up, and you'll see it being removed from the green areas and only applied to the white areas of her dress. This is a really great tool actually for this effect. So that's one way, and you can also change your density to bring back the black areas, which is the masked out areas within your mask. But let's say you want to be a little bit more exact. We also have a brush mask available for you. So in this case, I want to mask back in the effect into her dress only and mask out the rest. So the best option for me is to invert this, and what it's going to do is turn my mask into a black mask versus white, and now I can go into a white brush. I'm going to take my strength down to about 50 and paint that back in. I'm going to take my brush size probably up just a touch and the hardness down. I can quickly come in and start creating these pretty popular effects that are going around, the double exposure effects, where you are blending in multiple imagery to create your ending image. So very quickly able to do that. You can undo and redo and reset your mask here within the masking area, and it's as easy as that. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of this now that we've gone over masking and the move tool and things like that. Again, those are similar things that are carried over in most of our adjustments. Now we'll go down to dust and scratches. Dust and scratches is a little bit different than the rest of the overlay that have assets because it's just black and white. but we still have that category list where you can come in. Let's say I want to add just some dirtiness to my image. It's going to allow me just to scroll over and see how these are applied. Sometimes to see the effect, I like to take my opacity up and just see how it's working. So if I want to apply a little bit of a grunge or dirtiness to it, I can just click on that, and now I can start to affect it. I can change the size, then move it around, my color strength, change the color of it. But let's say I want to add, instead of these white dots, I want to add black, kind of dark dirtiness. Instead of light dirtiness, quickly you can do that by inverting, and you can still add color in and blend it in a different way. Note that because it's inverted, whenever you're on your red, you're going to see close to aqua. Whenever you're on your yellow, you're going to see blue. Whenever you're on your blue, you're going to see yellow. All the colors will be inverted as well. But I hope that gives you a good idea of how you can use the dust and scratches adjustment. Next up is our light leaks. It's one of my favorites. I love it, love it, love it. It allows you to add these really subtle lighting effects to your image, or really obvious lighting effects. It just depends on what you want and what you're trying to create. So you're going to have more dynamic effects like this. You're going to have more diffused effects where you start to see just really beautiful diffused light coming in. Dynamic, we just went over that. Defined, where they're a little bit sharper. Sun flare, which is my personal favorite. I just love the sun flare. So I can come in and add a sun flare to my image very quickly. Let's say I want to add, I'm just going to go with this top left one. And now I want to, maybe let's bring it over to the left-hand side. This is where you really start to see the benefit of flipping around and maneuvering the effect exactly where you want to go. You can also change the blending mode in here. I find that lighten or screen are going to be the best for blending mode, so for this particular effect, so I leave it in screen, or that's where the default is, but you can always change it. You can change the saturation of your lighting effect, the color strength, if you don't like the fact that it's this yellow color and you want to maybe go aqua with it, very quick to do so. So a lot of opportunity here to get some cool lighting effects very quickly. Lastly, we have our textures. We are about 12 minutes out. If you have any questions, send them in. I'm going to go over this textures a little bit more thoroughly really quickly and show you our texture manager, and then we are at the end, and then I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can before the hour. Okay, so the texture effects or texture adjustment is where you'll see the most assets that we have within the program. You can take a look at our bokeh effects. This is an effect where I would highly suggest you immediately turn on the keep aspect ratio. The keep aspect ratio is instead, like I said, instead of stretching to fit in your image, will keep the original aspect ratio of the asset itself. So here you'll start to see the dots come through, or the bokeh come through in a much more natural way. So here is also a very important thing when blending. You'll want to go in and blend this in a different way than just, I like to go into screen for the bokeh because I have that black background, so a little bit more natural of a bokeh texture. Okay, moving on. Color wash. Gonna give you some really nice, beautiful color washes on your image. Let's get out of the screen mode. What I'm really just trying to show you is that you have a ton of different assets here. We have heavy grunge, if you want to add a heavy grunge effect, paper and textile, soft grunge, urban grit, wooden nature, and then these are my personal ones. I'm going to show you how to create those in just a second, but then you can go to, let's say, soft grunge. Maybe I want to add a soft pinkish tone, so I'm going to click on that. Again, this is, so you can just preview these so quickly. It's lovely. I'm going to increase my opacity. When I'm at the normal mode, I'm not going to, it's just going to kind of look hazy. Be sure you go in and start going over all of these different blending modes to see how that texture blended with your adjustment stack is going to be best for you. So for this one, I might use well, kind of like these darker ones where it's making my image slightly darker. I think I'm going to use multiply and take that opacity down just a touch. You can add detail in to the asset itself. Look at the texture detail coming through up here on the the top part of the image. You can also soften it and get a much more softer effect, or harder. Saturation, same idea. You can increase that saturation, decrease. You can add a different color to it. Let's say I want it to go a little bit more blue. You can easily do that. Oh, not the saturation. Let's take that down. So instead of being blue, or instead of being pink, it goes a little bit more blue and purple. Now we come to a very large question that people have. Can you add your own textures? Yes. Come up to, and can you add every single asset library that we have? You can import your own personal textures. So, or import your own personal assets. Just click on the import icon to the right of the drop-down list, and it's going to pull up that particular asset manager. So for this one, it's our texture manager. And you can go through, you can import your images or textures into the categories that are already there, or you can create your own category by clicking on Add Category down here at the bottom. I can name my category, so Nichole Test 3, say OK. It's going to immediately jump to that category, and I can import individual textures here. I don't have any textures ready to go. I should have done that. But let's say I just want to import that image. It's going to copy. Once it's done, it'll let me know that it's done, and then I see that particular texture within that manager. Now I close, come over to my drop-down list, go to my new category, Nichole Test 3, and here's my beautiful flower image right there to be used. So easy, easy, easy to import your textures and use them and preview them immediately, like we're doing here with the Topaz textures as well. So it really makes things a ton faster for you if you're a texture freak like I am. All right, let's see. Overall masking. Let's get down there. Overall masking is going to be at the bottom. Not only do we have that adjustment level masking, but we do have overall blending and masking. So you can blend by using that opacity slider and blend the overall adjustment stack back in with your input image. You can also change, or you can also do a spot or brush mask. We went over both of those tools, so I'm not going to go into that, but you can do that on an overall mask for the whole effect. The last thing I wanted to go over, let's do a quick, another basic adjustment, and I'm going to do this to really show you an interesting use for, or an interesting tool to know about. Let's go ahead and add a texture. I'll add this texture in a soft light. Maybe, okay, we'll go overlay. So you can see this individual texture here. Here's before and after. One thing within Texture Effects that we've added is the ability to switch around your modules, so, or switch around the adjustments so you're able to see them in a different way. So currently, I have my input image at the very top of my adjustment stack, and I've changed it with my basic adjustment, and then I added my edge blur on top of that, and then I added another basic adjustment which went crazy with the tone, and then I added this texture. Well, if I want this basic adjustment to affect the overall image, including the texture, I can just pull it down. I'm going to say this adjustment level masking does break when you move the adjustment layers around, so just know that. But you can say no and get it to go back, or say yes if you're prepared. And look what it just did. It just completely changed the way that texture is being applied, because now that basic adjustment is not only affecting my input image, the other basic adjustment, and my edge blur, it's now affecting the texture. If I want the edge blur to be on the last thing, I can just take that down. And now you'll see that that blur has been applied to the edges of my image, including the edges of the texture. So just know that that ability is there for you to really create the effect that you want, the overall ending effect. I hope this gave you a fantastically quick and at least thorough look. I know it was quick and a lot of information thrown at you, but I hope it was a thorough introduction to Topaz Texture Effects. All right, everybody, have a fantastic rest of your day or evening or afternoon, and we shall be talking to you tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.